What are your favorite dude just when crazy stories? I used to work in a large pet store in the small animal fish section. Half the people that worked in my area couldn't care less about the animals. I always freaking hated them for it. They were just being lazy at a poor animal's expense. Anyway, we tried to pair up a caring person with a lazy person in the hopes that crap would get done. So one day I come in for second shift and the one responsible girl comes running up to me. Apparently the other person, we will call Eric, went ape crap crazy and fed a bunch of different animals to a couple savannah monitors, like a little Komodo dragon. He did this out in the open, in front of people, and their children. Normally we fed the snakes, live mice in the back, so all in all the savannah monitors ate a finch, a couple anoles, a mouse, a hamster, a rat pinky, baby, and who knows what else. He tried to feed a tarantula to them but they didn't eat it. I believe he was really high on something, probably acid. He left before I got there and was fired quit. He came back in a week or so later to get his paycheck and the manager told him to GTFO, and that they would mail it to him. So, worked for a car rental place. It's the night before the 2007 New Hampshire primary, and we are going insane. So many reporters, activists, campaign workers, and the like pouring in, we have had to more than double our fleet of cars. Anyway, Hillary Clinton is having a campaign event across the way at a health club, literally right across from our secured, spike strip protected parking lot. Now, we're stacked to the gills, nowhere to put any cars. People see our drivers pulling into the secured lot and think it's a place for them to park. It's totally not. It's poorly lit, has no set spaces, chaotic, half covered in snow, and crowded. So they pull in, and the way the sensor worked, it would let you in automatically, but to get out you needed a code. So we got 2-3 people inside before we realized WTF was going on. Anyway, we go to escort them out, and this huge dude is losing it. He's like 6 feet 6 inches, probably about 60 or 65, and rail thin. He's slamming on the hood of his car, screaming, well, why can't I leave it here? You're interfering in democracy. You're fascists, while my co-worker is trying to explain that none of this matters. You can't leave your car on our lot. The guy starts punching his window till it cracks, screams, now look at what you've done, at my co-worker, jumps in, and tries to drive off. He gets to the exit and his passenger gets out and holds up the bar, stopping him from driving over the spikes. He then drives right over them, popping all 4 tires. He gets out, screams in incoherent rage, and just walks away, leaving his car there. We had to tow it out of the way to get our cars out for the rest of the night. This story comes from my dad from his army time in Angola. He was in the South African Defense Force. One of the smaller, weaker guys in his unit suddenly starts going ape crap. Just total Hulk mode, screaming incoherently, and tossing crap around. Other guys from the unit try and restrain him, but this guy just tosses them off like they weigh nothing. Anyway, they finally get him to a doctor. Turns out the guy had a beetle in his ear canal just chewing away. He was totally back to normal after they got it out, but the point is, beetles in your ear turn you into the Hulk. I was at Waffle House at 2 in the morning when this scraggly looking guy with long grey hair walks in and sat down at one of the tables. One of the waiters comes up to take his order and he yells, I don't want any dang food. So he sits there for a minute and goes outside to smoke a cigarette, and the whole time he's outside he's just talking to himself. He comes back in and goes, where the frick is my food? The waiter tells him he didn't order anything, so he tells her what he wants. As the food is being cooked, he pulls out this big butt knife and just licks it while staring at the waitress. About this time she calls the cops, and when they show up he immediately jumps out of his chair and runs behind the counter and yells, call the police, to which the cops reply, we are the police. Then they tased him and handcuffed him. Also, this was right outside of Sand Mountain, Alabama, which is a pretty prominent M-town. And that's why we made sure our weekend Waffle House trips always ended before the bars close. Senior year of high school, there was this kid smearing crap on the walls of all the boys' bathrooms. It was going on for months, and no one knew who was doing it. He was notoriously known as the pooper-tratter. It got so bad that they eventually locked all the boys' bathrooms except one that was monitored by the faculty. One day at lunch someone shouted they caught the pooper-tratter. Everyone gets up and sees the vice principal and a few faculty chasing this fat greasy-haired freshman down the hall, out into street. Never heard anything about it again. Was so expecting everyone gets up and sees the vice principal being escorted away by security. There's a story at my work about a guy at my work. He's a really friendly, calm, nice guy. Apparently a number of years ago he was working a lot of overtime and tried to get a cup of soup from the vending machine and it got stuck. Apparently he very calmly came back with a hammer, smashed the glass, then sat down and ate his soup. They gave him a few weeks off and he's still working here. A couple weeks ago I was sitting next to the vending machines and he came in and chose a soup. It fell and got stuck. I got really nervous, but he just left. I bet he thought about it. Worked at the airport for a long time, pushing wheelchairs for handicapped passengers. I was sitting near the drop-off entrance. This awesome Mexican guy comes running in, heavily accented, sweating a bit, and came up to me, sort of hush hush, and asked, "Here, do you have pancakes here?" I was like, "Huh, pancakes? Do you have pancakes?" "No, this is an airport, sir. There are no pancakes here." And the dude just booked it out of the building. I just imagined a whole backstory where he has a pregnant wife who is freaking out over a pancake craving, and you guys let him down by not whipping up some pancakes. Mine isn't as good as the others, but I guess it's worth sharing. When I was in 5th grade there was a kid in my class who was known to be a problem child. During bathroom breaks he had to go in alone after everyone else, because once he walked up behind me while I was at the urinal and started dry humping me. He did things like that all the time. One day the class is working on a project or something, when the teacher calls him over to the desk. To this day I have no idea what she said to him. All I know is a second later I hear him scream at the top of his lungs and start charging across the room. There was a lectern in his way, so he picks it up and throws it, just missing hitting me with it by about a foot. He keeps charging toward the door, flipping desks and anything else in his way. He goes out in the hallway, tears down a giant art project we had hanging on the wall. At this point the teacher finally stands up and walks out to stop him, right before he can push a huge wardrobe thing. It was on wheels, down the stairs. After this we never really saw him much. He would return to school for a little while, but eventually he would do things like this and wouldn't be at school again. The last time I saw him was sometime around middle school. After that we joked about how he almost killed me. A few months ago he was all over the news because he murdered a girl. I think that last line really pulled the story together. Last summer, Taco Bell kinda near Union Square in NYC, pretty late night. Go in. Not surprised how dirty it is, nor how loud and rowdy it is either. Just people laughing, yelling at each other and throwing trash around. Kinda like a movie scene, but seems relatively good-natured drunken goof-off session going on in there. Next thing I know a dude kicks open the door and starts grabbing the chairs and throwing them around the place. I mean full on hucking them around the joint. I think he got like maybe 4 successful good chucks and a few more weaker ones. He gets up to the counter and dude behind the counter just grabs a baseball bat from under the register area and stares the guy down saying, "Don't make me use this." Then the madman rolls out yelling at everyone, goes back to business as usual. At a high school party, one of the kids there was a Tucker Max disciple. He always tried to be the alpha male party bro, cocky chick banger. Anyway, he kept telling people to punch him in the face and to see what happens. So some kid goes up to him, looks him in the eye, and socks him straight in the jaw. He went down. He immediately gets up, runs upstairs, and he comes down with a knife and a phone. He starts screaming, "I am gonna knife your freaking butt, then call the cops." This was a strange thing for him to say, considering he had been arrested multiple times and would be calling the cops on himself for underage drinking. The whole party goes silent. 2 of his friends slowly start approaching him and grab the objects out of his hands. Needless to say he hasn't been invited to many parties since. Kudos to the kid that hit him. What a dumb crap thing to say. I was standing in a grocery store parking lot a row away from some kids in their car. They had some older guy go in and buy them a bottle of liquor. When he comes back out, I guess there was some dispute over the price because they start arguing and the older dude just throws a half-gallon bottle of whiskey on the asphalt and runs off. Kids these days have no respect. When I was that age getting strangers to purchase my alcohol, I was grateful and let them keep the change. I was a party at a friend's house, back in the late 80s. There's this gigantic dude there, whom none of us knew, carrying around an almost empty bottle of tequila. He's friggin' linebacker sized, and crazed from the drink. He's picking on this totally small skinny harmless friend of mine. Giganta all of a sudden approaches tiny friend and, out of nowhere, sticks him in the side with a Swiss Army knife. This all happened so fast, nobody can stop it. Besides, he is Giganta the Tequila King. Before I can grab my girl and exit the premises, party owner appears out of nowhere with a .38 revolver, snaps the cylinder into place, and yells, "Alright, let's knock this crap the frick out." I got the frick out of Dodge. Tiny bleeding friend was okay, with a couple stitches. Have no idea what happened to Giganta the stabbing idiot. Giganta the Tequila King. Best title. Packed shopping mall, height of Christmas season. From deep within the crowd, some guy hauls off and lets out a blood-curdling, frustrated primal scream. After a few seconds silence, people laughed, because he'd basically just said what everyone was thinking. Imagining this made me laugh. In the pub, a man with a massive mustache walks in, does a handstand and then just leaves, completely silent. The greatest thing I have ever seen. No doubt displaying the physical benefits of lifting kettlebells and boxing kangaroos. This will probably sound tame compared to some other stories in this thread, but I still found it funny. Early 2000s. My dad is taking my sister and I out to dinner because we didn't have time to eat at home. We end up going to Culver's. It's a bit busy. They're in the middle of their dinner rush. The three of us are standing in line inside. We get to the front, and then the cashier just walks away. Doesn't say a single word to my dad, just walks off. His shift must have been up or something. Anyways, we're standing there for 5, maybe 10 minutes. My dad is beginning to get pee off. Finally, he manages to catch an employee as he is rushing by. "Excuse me, we've been standing here for a while," my dad says. The employee gazes at the cash register and looks back up at my dad. "Oh, this register is closed." My dad is usually a really chill guy, but he was not in a good mood this day. "What? That's bogus." Suddenly my dad is shouting at the top of his lungs, and my sister and I quickly look at each other like, what, embarrassed? We end up having to drag my dad out of the Culver's while he continues to shout, "That's bogus. That's bogus." We ended up going to Burger King instead. It's really hard to take somebody seriously when they are using the word bogus, but this sounds like it'd be awesome to see. I'm jing at one of my normal strip clubs I work at. This huge "I'll lift things up and put them down" type Mexican, Puerto Rican, Brazilian, something South American guy decides to take out his phone and try taking pictures of the girls. One of the bouncers comes over and exclaims that he can't do that, and to put the phone away or he would take it. The guy nods and puts his phone away. 20 minutes later, he's back at it again. The bouncer comes over and takes his phone and walks away. The dude flips. He gets up, starts screaming in Spanish, flips 2 tables, and is pointing at the bouncer who took his phone. The bouncer approaches him to handle the situation and the guy shoves the bouncer clear across the club. He continues to flip out, but his time is coming to an abrupt end. We have a 6 feet 7 inches, easily close to 300 pounds of pure muscle African bouncer. He also is a black belt and a very well trained MMA fighter. He sneaks up behind the guy, puts him in a sleeper hold, and about 8 seconds later the guy drops to floor. The bouncer bends over, grabs the dude by the belt pants, lifts his whole body off the ground with one arm, looks at everyone, yells out "crap's fine," and then proceeds to carry him out the front door with one arm. The dude looked like a human duffel bag. BAMF. How I can just imagine a big black dude. I freaking got this. Go back to partying. At my school, one girl who had perfect attendance her whole life got a tardy and was caught by an administrator. She simply slapped the administrator and walked away. I'll allow it. Worked phone tech support for a major internet ISP. One day, this guy who was a manager completely lost his crap over nothing. A little background on this dude. Imagine kind of a pot-bellied stereotypical Jewish guy. Kind of like a character Larry David would make, only less interesting. Dude was somewhat irritated here and there, but rarely ever did I hear him raise his voice, and when he did, it was rather underwhelming. So this one day, he's with another manager type on the call floor. This other manager is a really young, thin, pale guy, who I believe even had medical problems. So the young manager is kind of flirting with the female co-worker and jokingly takes her pen away. The Jewish manager guy, for some reason, feels the need to step in. Okay, that's enough, give her back her pen. The younger manager continues to taunt the female co-worker by not giving it back. She was giggling and such the whole time this is going on. Suddenly docile old Jew guy switches to beast mode and goes, gimme that motherfucking pen, and tackles the dude onto the floor. A buddy of mine at the time got a snapshot of the altercation. So in the pic, there's this portly Jewish guy on top of a skinny pale dude, clutching onto a pen and in the fetal position on the floor. And all this happened on my day off. I was I didn't get to be there in person. I didn't think I had one, but my memory tweaked while I was reading responses. I used to work in the IT department for a software company. It was in an upscale part of town and the developers owned a bunch of high-end sports cars. So we had IT maintained cameras on the parking lots. So in the middle of the day, one of our users walks in to shoot the crap and mentions, "Did you see the fight in the parking lot?" My co-workers just respond with, "Bwah," but I'm halfway to bringing up the security system. Sure enough, we find video of these two run-of-the-mill cars pull into the parking lot and stop in the middle of a lane. The drivers get out and just start swinging in that pathetic way non-movie fights happen. One guy got in a pretty pathetic looking jump kick. That was fun. After getting a couple of hits in, they both go back to their cars and drive off. Elapsed time, less than 2 minutes. I save the video and my co-worker links the rest of the company to it. We got pretty chewed out for that one. I thought that was the end of it, but the next day, a cop drops by asking us if we had any info on the incident. I burned the video to a CD for him, and as I'm giving it to him, I ask him if he has any idea who they were. He says there were some Eastern European types. I can't remember if they were friends or just acquaintances. I tell him that's crazy and ask him if they were okay after the fight. Oh, no. A few minutes after they left here, one guy stabbed the other. He's in the hospital. I saw a girl run over her boyfriend in front of a bar once. It was just like in the movies where he flips up over the hood of the car. I would love to know what he did to set her off. So, technically, she ran under him. I went to military school for my junior year of high school, and back then I was fat, had lots of acne, and crooked teeth. I got picked on a lot at an all-male school, and some of it was freaking mean. Made a few good friends though, because I was funny. During the second to last day of school, I come back into my room to find the picture of my grandparents that I had, with a recording feature that allows them to record a message which they can play back, had been erased and recorded over with "Look at these homosexual grandparents." The worst part was, my grandpa was dead. He died of cancer. I tried to figure out who it was, and this is where I lost it. I found who I thought might have done it and then smacked him upside the head with a keyboard. He was completely confused and scared when I did that. I demanded to know if he did this, and he said no. I played it again, and he recognized the voice. It was another person in the same company. I talked to my friend Elkins about it, who was a big rugby player. He's about 6 feet 4 inches, made of pure, lean muscle, and highly protective of his friends. I showed him the image and he suddenly snaps and goes into a rage. Wachowski. It's freaking Wachowski, and he storms off. I follow him, and he finds this dude and his whole face goes red and he decks the kid so hard he gets thrown to the ground and his mouth is bleeding. If it wasn't for the 4 grown men holding him down, he would have torn that kid to pieces. One dude could barely hold onto him, much less hold him down. Took like 4 guys just to get him to calm down. Mad respect for that kid for doing that. I was getting onto the subway to go to school one morning and I get on and I notice there are 2 seats open. One next to a wrinkly old Asian lady and one next to a somewhat menacing looking Mexican dude in an orange jumpsuit. Seeing as I didn't want to stand, and that I dislike sitting next to wrinkly old people, I decided to sit next to the Mexican guy. Now, my stop is roughly 10 stops from where I got on. About 3 stops from where I got on, the dude starts looking at people, and instantly, I knew he was going to say something and I just thought frick. He then proceeds to shout everyone's reading the same paper, and thus began the longest 20 minutes of my life. He talked about the movie The Transporter. He talked about something incomprehensible, with the only thing I understood being that he had a gun in his left pocket that he'd fire at my right eye and a gun in his right pocket that he'd shoot at my left eye, and he also had a plastic bag full of paper that he proceeded to make paper airplanes out of, and claiming that he was aiming them at people's eyes. And that's the day I learned not to sit next to people who look like they just escaped from jail. I was friends with an art student who graduated a couple years ahead of me. For one of his senior thesis projects, he asked a girl to find a friend to roll around nude in paint with her, applying it to a canvas. He told the one girl that he had collected his seed for a couple weeks in a plastic bag and mixed it with the paint she was going to roll around in. Crazy artsy girl agrees, as well as agrees not to tell her friend. As soon as he applied the paint to the women, he reveals the nature of the paint to the other girl. The two girls end up fighting on top of the canvas, nude and covered in semen paint. Now that's some artistic genius right there. I was at Disney World during senior year of high school with a few of my friends waiting at one of the bus stops. The bus arrived and we got in at the back. Suddenly, the rather elderly looking driver comes running to the back where we were sitting, points a finger at us, a bunch of obvious 18-year-olds, and yells at the top of his voice, "Do you like Hannah Montana?" We naturally find the humor in this and yell back, "YAAAH" at the top of our voices. This goes back and forth a couple times and then he yells, "Excellent. You have just scored an autographed picture of Lenny the bus driver," proceeds to hand us a picture of himself holding a picture of himself with a signature in the bottom, and hops on off to the front of the bus. For the rest of the ride, he loudly sings random songs while driving. We made sure to take a picture with him before we got off. Greatest bus driver ever. Removed. US Army, Korea. Guy was doing shift work, day in and day out, all admin work, in a full office. One day he loses it, and whips out his dong and starts masturbating in front of everyone. He said nothing the entire time, just kept stroking. They had to call the military police to separate himself from himself, and they took him away. Was at All Good Music Fest 2 years ago when I hear a crazy guy running down the road. I turn to see a naked man get tackled face down on gravel yelling, "I'm Gonzo Garcia and you are my sheep, you will let me go," and such for about 10 minutes till they got a stretcher out there to strap him down to. Halfway through strapping him down he pee all over the security guard. I was at this wedding reception in Tennessee, in the middle of nowhere, at the married couple's house. All of a sudden, these two dudes just went crazy. They were yelling at each other and began to get into a heated discussion. I figured WTF, I might as well see what this is all about, could be epic. What I walked into was something I'll never forget. They were arguing about whose truck could out-tow the others. Both were ready to brawl it out until someone said, "Why don't y'all tie a tow strap to your hitches and drive in opposite directions?" I didn't stick around after that. I don't really remember why, but I do remember a few of them came to the party armed. So, it's my junior year. My friend group and I are sitting in the lunchroom eating, doing what kids do at lunch. It was a little boring, so I decided to start up a bit of fun. The lunchroom was serving rolls, so I tore off a bit, balled it up, and chucked it across the table at my friend. She returned the favor. Someone else joined in, then someone else, then someone else. Then it spread to the table next to us, and next to them. Before I knew it, we had a full-blown food fight going on. This lasted for a minute or two, just having good, old-fashioned fun, until, out of freaking nowhere, this 6 feet 4 inches huge, usually rather reserved and nerdy, black dude just freaked out. He stood up and screamed like someone had just shown him a picture of his mom sucking their dong. Freaking primal stuff. He ran over to a huge, completely full 55-gallon trash can, picked it up, and threw it at least 25 feet across the room. This apparently was not enough carnage to calm the beast. because he then ran over to a table and started to pick it up. About this time, one of the security guards, who was also the defensive line coach, so I think you see where this is going, came running down the stairs to respond to what I assume he thought was a food fight. He sprinted over to Hulk and speared him into the ground. I'm talking a full-on flying shoulder tackle. Crap was intense. Around this time, people were running out of the lunchroom to get away from the chaos and to take advantage of this rare moment of anarchy. Take advantage of it they did. Those of us that remained were commanded by the faculty that was around to go straight to our classrooms for that period and not all leave under penalty of academic death. We were on lockdown. The police were called. 3 students were arrested. My vice principal was assaulted by a couple students in a stairwell. We were on the news. And that's the story of how I caused a riot with a dinner roll. A group of friends and I had finished seeing a movie and decided to walk underneath the highway through a closed underpass to get to the mall across the street. As we passed by a porta potty, a bearded and likely senile homeless man came out, spotted us, and exclaimed that he would help us cross the street. He raised his arms, walked into the middle of the street and said, "Follow me." A bunch of cars slammed to a stop and this guy just stood there glaring at my friends and I with deliberation. My friends and I quickly, and rather embarrassingly, crossed the street immediately. As we walked towards the mall, that guy remained standing there, arms raised to the heavens, with cars blaring at him. Did anyone else imagine Gandalf shouting, "You shall not pass"? I was 12 or 13 and at Boy Scout summer camp, there was a fat kid named Christian that the more sadistic kids used to pick on. He was the typical creepy D&D Warhammer type. This was his first summer camp, and he had already been made a spectacle of when he woke up in the middle of the night and tore down the tent next to him trying to find a bathroom. I imagine him lumbering like a zombie. Bathroom. Through him with his chubby arms outstretched. Anyway, about halfway through the week, Christian went to the camp store and bought a hiking stick. He took it back to his tent and put anime stickers all over it. He called it his Naruto staff. He'd go out into a nearby field, thinking we weren't watching him, and flip it and spin it around while making whooshing noises. Anyway, one day, one of the dong kids stole his Naruto staff and put it in one of those floor to chest height urinals and pee on it. Christian went Super Saiyan. He grabbed the kid, clawed at him like a woman scorned, and stomped on him. He even beat the heck out of the kids trying to stop him. It took 3 college-age counselors to restrain him. They ended up giving Christian a new Naruto staff, but in his own words, it just isn't the same. The next few days, people were very wary of Christian and his mighty hidden Thor powers. Oh god, it's always the Weebus. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.